Donald Trump's asking for a nationwide abortion ban.
Wait, he
and
has
again,
said that
we don't see this
he has
as a
said
winning
repeatedly
campaign.
that he will not sign a national abortion ban. Are you calling that just, it's a flat out lie?
Not only is Kamala Harris not putting herself out there for interviews, but of course, Tim Walz isn't either. Although I have to say, credit where it's due. He did show up on Fox News Sunday yesterday with Shannon Bream. But I think in retrospect, the Harris-Walz campaigns prefers that he hadn't. What you're about to see is the first time I've seen any of the Sunday show anchors actually deliver truth about all of the lies we've been hearing over Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and abortion. I'm talking truth about Trump's stance on a federal abortion law. I'm talking truth about Tim Walz's abortion policies in Minnesota, and also truth about a tragic death that the left is saying happened because of Georgia's abortion laws, but that's a complete and total lie. It's a fraud. Shannon Bream actually brought the truth, and it didn't go well for Tim Walz. Let's watch.
I want to clarify what the law is there in Minnesota. Abortion Finder, a website that helps women find access, says abortion is legal throughout pregnancy in Minnesota. There is no ban or limit on abortion in Minnesota based on how far along in a pregnancy you are. You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that
this
law
is a
goes
woman's
far beyond
right
Roe v. Wade
to make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion.
But
wait, let's
agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with the woman and her healthcare providers. The situation we have is when you don't have the ability of healthcare providers to provide that, that's where you end up with a situation like Amanda Zaworski in Texas, where they are afraid to do what's necessary. This doesn't change anything. It puts the decision back on to the woman, to the physicians, and we know that this is simply something to be brought up to be very clear. Donald Trump's asking for a nationwide abortion ban.
Wait, he has
and again,
said that
we don't see this
he has
as
said
a winning
repeatedly
campaign.
that he will not sign a national abortion ban. Are you calling that just, it's a flat out lie?
Yes, of course. And Senator Vance has in the past said so too. Now, look, they may see this as an election issue. We see it as a right of women to make their own bodily decisions. And that's what the states like my state have the ability to put that in. States like Georgia force women to cross the border, and then we have a death of Amber Thurman. So let's be very clear. Trying to cut hairs on an issue on this is not where the American public's at. They want the restoration of Roe versus Wade. Vice President Harris said she would sign it. That's what we'll do when we're elected.
But to be clear, the Minnesota law is far beyond Roe v. Wade. And about the Amber Thurman case in Georgia, her family has, and it's tragic, she is a young mother who left behind a young son. But what her family has said is it was a complication from an abortion pill that she received. And she didn't get proper care when she went to a Georgia hospital, which had multiple opportunities to intervene there. Her own attorney, the family's attorney, says it wasn't the Georgia law, it was the hospitals. What he claims is malpractice, not treating her when she clearly showed up in distress and still had the byproducts of her pregnancy because of that rare complication from the abortion pill. So just to be clear on the Georgia law and how her family and her attorney sees it.
That was absolutely brilliant from Shannon Bream. I was applauding when I saw that. I literally stood up in my house and applauded her because, and honestly, and I like Shannon Bream, and I think she did a fine job of, in a very clear and cohesive way, just deliver the facts about that. But isn't it funny that just delivering the facts about this mythology that has been created by the Democrats, by Harris, by Walz, by the activists, and of course I'm talking about activists like Kristen Welker and Maureen Brennan and George Stephanopoulos, the hosts of the other Sunday shows, that just delivering the facts about this deserves applause. They have been lying to you. They have been lying to you. They have been lying to you about every aspect of abortion. And the biggest lie about that whole thing was, Trump may see this as a campaign issue, but we see it as a human fact. Like, they don't see it as a campaign issue. It's all they've got to campaign on is fear-mongering over abortion. This guy even claimed that Donald Trump was going to have a national pregnancy database that would track people's pregnancy. It's an outright lie. They are terrifying people in this country to try to get them to vote. And it's despicable. It's the worst kind of politics, but it's all they've got. But thank you, Shannon Bream, for pointing out the radical nature of the Minnesota law. It does go far beyond Roe v. Wade. That they keep saying Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade. We just want to restore Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was a Supreme Court decision that had basic frameworks under which laws could be crafted and still remain constitutional. And I assure you that a death right up until the moment of birth was not mentioned in the 1972 decision. Go back and read it. But it's certainly in Tim Walz's Minnesota law. But this is just the tip of the iceberg with regard to his absolute Hindenburg meets Titanic performance on Fox News Sunday. Not only can this guy not answer questions, but he certainly can't answer any tough questions. Shannon Bream continues.
Wall Street Journal says this after you were chosen to join the ticket. As the Democratic governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz signed into law initiatives allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's licenses, qualify for free tuition at state universities, and enroll in the state's free healthcare program for low-income residents. Are those not magnets to draw people here, many times on dangerous journeys for themselves? And why should your taxpayers in Minnesota or across the states pay for those programs?
Well, that's not the vice president's position, but I will say this. Minnesota ranks as a top 5 business state. We rank as a top 3 state for children living, and we're the top state for healthcare access. I would also add this. We also have some of the safest roads.
So the question is, you're giving all these freebies and benefits to people who enter the country illegally. By the way, things you don't even do for U.S. citizens. And isn't that a magnet to draw more people to come here illegally into this country and then end up in your state? And his response is, we've got really safe roads here in Minnesota. Really safe roads. All right. I think my favorite part was, well, Kamala Harris doesn't agree with those policies. Okay, but she picked you as her running mate, dude. I mean, don't you think that's relevant here, pal? More Tim Walz? You betcha more.
The vice president has made it clear that she has policies that make a difference. Her border policies are the most strongest, the fairest we've seen. It's
but now, Governor, you know, a lot of people, including your own party, would not join that statement. There are millions of people who have come here over the last few years that, they see this as an open border.
Well, simply, we have a policy. Donald Trump sees it as a political. Look, James Langford in Oklahoma, the Border Patrol agents, the Wall Street Journal, the Chamber of Commerce, all said pass this legislation. You have to have Congress to authorize 1,500 new border agents. You have to have Congress to authorize DOJ to speed adjudications on these asylum claims. Those are things that would actually work. Donald Trump told us for 4 years he would deal with this. He didn't. He didn't build his wall, 2%. Mexico didn't pay for it. This is a real bill that has bipartisan support. It has the experts on board, and it starts to tackle these issues.
All right, so the lies that need to be exploded here. First of all, the Border Patrol never endorsed their approach. The only thing about this so-called bipartisan bill that they were on board with was increased funding for what they had to do with, but they've already decried them and told them, stop citing us as a supporter of this, number one. Number two, even James Langford has now sort of pulled back on this thing. It had bipartisan support. It never even made it to the floor for a vote. The Republican minority wouldn't even bring it to the floor. So that's hardly bipartisan support. This is all a fig leaf that they're throwing out there. And of course, they're not going to have any level of majorities in the House and the Senate. So their entire policy right now, when asked about the border, is, well, we want to pass that thing that we couldn't get passed earlier this year with majorities in the Senate and a barely slim majority in the House. Their own Democrats are running away from this thing. Joe Manchin didn't support it. Kirsten Sinema didn't support it, I don't believe. And there's certainly plenty of members of the House Democrats that wouldn't support it. So it's a lie. They're constantly lying. All they can do is lie about this so-called bipartisan bill. And as Shannon Bream pointed out, millions of people have entered this country and they have no solutions in any way whatsoever. Don't turn to the governor of Minnesota to figure out how to solve the problems on our southern border, I think is a good lesson here. But the meltdown continues here. I mean, this was just a disaster for Tim Walz at every turn.
Republicans came out against it long before President Trump indicated he didn't like it either. Listen, before we go, because I wish that we had a full hour, I want to give you a chance, because you called yourself a knucklehead this week, to talk about some of your misstatements. Yes. You've modified your story or explained that you misspoke about things involving your military rank, about carrying a weapon in war, your 1995 DUI arrest, using IVF to have your beautiful children, Gus and Hope, being in Hong Kong and China in the summer of 1989 during the Tiananmen events. A lot of people would say they couldn't get away with saying, I'm just too passionate, my grammar's not right, I'm a knucklehead. What do you say to the American people who think, I don't know that I can trust this guy with all those modifications to be the potential commander-in-chief of this country?
By the way, can I just, again, I like Shannon Bream. I do. I've gotten to meet her on several occasions, and she's really a good person. Can I just say how artfully that was done? Because she sort of disarmed, even Walz is smiling. Because it was sort of disarming the way she did it. Because she said, you know what, listen, before you leave, I want to give you a chance. I want to give you a chance. I want to give you a chance to respond to this, because you called yourself a knucklehead at the debate for this one thing. But, you know, that's just scratching the surface. Here, we've prepared a graphic of all your lies. And she doesn't. Hey, you know what? You haven't had a chance to address all of your lies to the American people. So let's do it right now, because we're just that nice and generous to you. We'll give you a chance to address them all. God, Shannon Bream's, she's the boss in this interview. So let's hear Tim Walz respond to his misstatement. I did like that Fox News made it misstatements. They're lies. He's been lying. It's not a misstatement. It's a lie. Do you say that to your kids? Who ate these cookies? I didn't eat the cookies, with crumbs all over the face. Honey, I can see the crumbs on your face. You ate the cookies. Oh, I'm sorry. It was just a misstatement. Is that what we do when we confess? When you go into confession and you ask for forgiveness for your sins for lying and bearing false witness? Is that was the commandment? It's not bearing false witness. It's just making false misstatements. Thou shalt not make misstatements. Forgive me, Father. I made a misstatement here and there. Oh, you lied. You bore false witness. Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on, shall we?
Yeah, well, I think they heard me. They heard me the other night speaking passionately about gun violence and misspeaking. And I got to be honest with you, Shannon, I don't think people care whether I used IUI or IVF when we talk about this. What they understand is Donald Trump would resist those things. Look, I speak passionately. I had an entire career, decades before I was in public office. They know, and I'm very proud of my 24 years in service and my record. I have never disparaged someone else in this, but I know that's not what Donald Trump does. They disparage everyone, the personal attacks. I will own up when I misspeak. I will own up when I make a mistake. Let's be very clear.
I will own up is the new standard now. I will own up, and he hasn't owned up, of course. I'll own up when I misspeak, when they're actually lies. Oh, shoot. What was oh, darn it. This is my problem when I let these. Everyone says, let the clips play. And then I forget what I was going to say.
IVF, when we talk about.
Oh, yeah. The IVF thing. I don't think people care whether it's IVF or IUI. You know, people don't care what method you use. We care that you don't know how your children were conceived. You either lied about it to make a, which is, let's be clear, that's exactly what this was. As soon as IVF was in the news, he decided to grandstand and thump on his chest and say, my own children wouldn't be born today if Republicans had their way because they're against IVF. Really? Your children were conceived via IVF? No. Oh, so you're saying your children would have been conceived? Yes. So you lied? Yes. So this whole, it's all just, so the misstatements continue, apparently. Again with the misspeak. But is that, again, fundamentally, and maybe it's just because I'm a man and I think that this is sort of something men care about, but I'm pretty sure women care about this too. Forget about the lies for a second. He says he misspoke. He sort of, I misspoke when it came to how my children were conceived. Why isn't this man clear about how his own children were conceived? Why doesn't he have a clear handle on how his wife was impregnated? Maybe it's me. Maybe I prefer the hands-on approach. I don't go laissez-faire when it comes to how sperm is put into my... You get my point. I don't want to get too graphic. All right, there's more Tim Walz, though. There's more.
We're seeing economists talk about Donald Trump's proposal to add a 20% sales tax will cost $4,000. Okay. That's everybody. That's not me saying it.
And just to note, that is a tariff, which, by the way, this administration not only kept most of the Trump tariffs, but they added their own as well. So that's got to be part of the conversation.
Again, Shannon Bream on the spot with it, saying, oh, yeah, he's going to raise taxes. Actually, it's a tariff, and every single tariff that Trump put in, Biden kept and expanded on. You don't see this from any of the other. Where was Dana Bash on this? Where were the moderators in the debate on this? Shannon Bream deserves a lot of praise. One more thing as they move to foreign policy, because, you know, the position of the governor of Minnesota who wants to be commander-in-chief or one heartbeat away from it, his position on foreign policy is going to be really enlightening, right? Because, you know, other than going to China 30 times, and getting God knows what from the commies in Beijing, he doesn't have much else on foreign policy. So how about the Middle East there? How about the Middle East there, Timmy?
You said in a radio interview that anti-Israel protesters were speaking out, quote, for all the right reasons. You know that some of them are carrying Hamas flags. Some of them are calling for the extermination of the Jewish state. Do you want to clarify your praise for that?
Well, I'm certainly not talking about them. I'm talking about the people who understand that we have to end the humanitarian crisis, but they understand we need to return the hostages, bring peace to the region. Look, I will always defend people's rights to First Amendment, but that's not the folks I'm talking about. Those folks are not speaking for the entire group. So I think it's very clear on this. Israel's right, as we've stood with them. Anti-Semitism has no place in this country, and Vice President Harris has been clear about that. I've been clear about it. But the ability to bring a peaceful solution and understand Israel's right to defend itself, the return of the hostages, and Gazans' right to live in peace too, is something that we're trying to get to. And that's going to take the leadership that we've seen out of Vice President Harris, being able to hold this coalition together. And again, when Iran launched their missiles this week, she's in the Situation Room.
Yeah, she was in the situation. It's her job, buddy. What coalition is he talking about, by the way? We got to hold this coalition together. What coalition? There's no coalition. Israel is doing all the fighting. What coalition is he talking about? Number one. Number two, he said the Gaza protesters are doing it for all the right reasons. All the right reasons. Well, some of those reasons is Jew hatred. Some of those reasons is anti-Semitism. Some of those reasons doesn't want Israel to exist. Some of those reasons is literally pro-Hamas. And now he's claiming, oh, I didn't mean those people. Well, okay, that's what you said. It's what you said. And now you're telling us you didn't mean what you said? Oh, good to know. Okay. And again, when they go through the litany, have you noticed this about Democrats? When they go through the litany of what their priorities are, you know, ceasefire, make sure Gazans can live in peace, all of these things. What about the safety and security of the Israeli people? What about justice for the families of the people who were murdered, slaughtered, and who are continuing to be held captive? What about actual penalties that people should pay? What about the eradication of Hamas? Do you believe Hamas is a legitimate political entity, Mr. Walz? Could you answer that question? The answer is no, he can't answer it because he's too worried about certain votes in Michigan. This was a complete and total across-the-board disaster for Tim Walz and for the Harris-Walz campaign. And I don't think you'll be seeing this man give any more interviews in the near future. He can't handle it. And yet, the Democrats and the media want you to let him be a heartbeat away from the White House. Well, I mean, how bad can it be? We've had Kamala Harris a heartbeat away. So, there's that.